Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to today's webinar. A little about me before we get started. My name is Laura Deutsch, and I am a real estate agent with Keller Williams here in Summit, New Jersey. And about 18 years ago, I was living in Manhattan, and we decided it was time to make the move to the New Jersey suburbs. And I remember feeling a few things. I felt nervous because I had no idea what goes into buying a home. And I also felt confused because there were so many towns to choose from. And how did I know which one was the right fit for me? So today, as a real estate agent, those two things are my main priority. It's to demystify the whole home buying process, make it manageable, make it not intimidating, and also I really focus on making sure you pick the right town that would fit your lifestyle. Because picking the right town, I would arguably say, is more important than even the home because where you move to, you're starting your roots, you're building your community, you're making friends, and you want to stay there. If the home isn't perfect, well, guess what? You can always get a new home in that town. But the one thing you want to make sure is that you're very happy with the town you chose. So we're going to start getting into all of the steps and the timeline. And if anyone has questions, please feel free, just shout them out, and we'll also have time for questions at the end. Okay, that was supposed to be that. Okay, so the very first step in buying a home is getting a pre-approval. And there's two reasons why pre-approvals are very important in this process to get done before you start looking for a home. And the first is to get really budget clarity. I've worked with numerous clients who thought that they knew their budget. And then after going through the pre-approval process, I've had both outcomes where they realize they can afford more or they realize they can't afford as much. So it's really important to work with the lender to get pre-approved so you really know what you can afford because we want to make sure that you're looking for homes that are in your budget. The worst thing would be to find a home, think you can afford it, and then realize you can't. And secondly, a pre-approval is necessary to submit an offer. And today I have Kathy Maloney on with me. She is my friend and mortgage lender whom I work with. And Kathy is going to talk a little bit about the pre-approval process and how long it's good for, and how every time we put in an offer to a home, she'll tell you the process of getting a new pre-approval letter. So, Kathy, take it away.
Thank you, Laura. So my name is Kathy Maloney, and I work for Atlantic Financial Services, and I've been doing mortgage funding for many decades. And I think the most important thing that is so helpful to my clients is the education of the mortgage process, because this whole buying a home is stressful and sometimes you're uncertain. But if you can get an education about the mortgage process, it kind of takes the stress level down a little bit. So, number one, when you would reach out to me, and Laura can give you my contact information, I would have you complete a form that will allow us together to review your comfortableness with a mortgage payment. I initially, with your permission, will do a soft credit pull, which has no effect on your score, but gives the lender, me, the opportunity to review your score and see what kind of monthly debts you have to determine what payment you're comfortable with. At this point, and the sooner you can get to me, the better, because if your credit score is not where you thought it would be, should be, or you know where what it was, but you'd like it to be higher, if we have enough time, I can give you some helpful hints that will be able to raise your score if if we have enough time, before you buy a home. And the higher the score, the better your mortgage rate. I recently we did this with one of my clients, and this he was able to raise his score like 17 points, and he saved like $2,500 in closing costs because of this. And it was just like people don't know what you don't know. So that was super helpful. Um, the pre-approval process itself, you would upload your documents, super easy to do, safe process, and then we would determine what you're comfortable with mortgage wise. And we can run a bunch of different scenarios based on what you're looking at. The pre-approval is good for 4 months. After that, we can run another soft pull, or if you tell me I'm nothing has changed and we're not working towards increasing your score, then we can just continue with the same pre-approval, maybe update the income information. What else did
And
we want to
Kathy,
talk?
can you talk about what happens because you give a general pre-approval and they know what they're pre-approved for. And then as an agent, y- Kathy knows that maybe you want to explain that about
Sure.
how,
So,
yeah.
so we would talk about, say you're looking at a price range of this to this, and you know you're putting down a certain percentage. Then you find a house and you decide with your realtor, okay, I'm going to offer, making this up, 650. My pre-approval letter matches the offer that you're submitting with your real estate agent to the seller, so that your seller doesn't know, oh, hey, these people are approved for 750, but we usually match the letter, the pre-approval letter, to the amount you're offering on your contract. And once you're pre-approved with me, it literally takes me 5 minutes to change the amount on the letter that you're looking at. So, or the home that you're looking at with on my letter.
Thanks, Kathy. So as an agent, whenever I put in an offer for a client, the client knows to shoot a text or an email to their lender, tell them the address of the house and what they're offering, and the lender will shoot you back with that new pre-approval letter to include.
Right.
Okay, so moving on. Okay. Step two. Narrow down your ideal towns. So, as you heard me say in the beginning of this presentation, picking the right town is really crucial to being happy where you are, right? And there's different community vibes. Some have better transportation to the city than others. Is a downtown important to you? Walkability? So, my role in this process is to be a soundboard and educate you on the towns here. But I also have a program called My Town Specialists, and I partner with local residents who live in these towns. So, if you wanted to speak with one, I could set you up with that person so you can really get insight into what it's like living there as an actual resident. And part of this whole process is to go and visit towns. And that's exactly what we'll do together. So, in that vibe, you also have to define what your ideal home is. And that's step three. How many beds? How many baths? Yard size? Are you open to renovations? Quiet street? All these things matter. And I will act as a sounding board again as you considering your must-haves versus your likes to haves. And what I always tell home buyers who are buying a home here in first time in the Jersey burbs is that your first home, if you look at it as if it has to be your forever home, it's going to be very hard to make a decision. So that's why you pick out certain things that you must have in that home. And usually I tell them three things that are must-haves. And if the house has those must-haves but not others, then it's a really good candidate because it's rare that people find everything that they're looking for in their price range. So It's very common. I've lived here for 18 years. I know a lot of people in the community, and there are many people who get their first home here in the suburbs, and then 5 or 10 years later, perhaps their financial situation is a little different, and they'll get their second home in the same town. So once we define all that, this is where the search begins. And this is the part that will tell you how long it will take for you to get a home. So basically, let's say you find a home, you fall in love, you put in an offer, and it gets under contract. From that moment, you can really close on a home as fast as 30 days. Generally, they take between 30 and 60 days, with averaging about 45 days. But this is the part that decides how fast it's going to take you to find your home. And that is why I believe it's so important to start your home search a few months before you really are serious. And that's so you can take a few weekends to come out, check out different towns, check out different homes in the towns, so that when it really comes down time to it, you can narrow down and hone in on your search and know exactly where to look. So I like to tell people, even a year out, it's helpful to just start educating yourself. You can go to towns, we can go to open houses. Just, again, you want to narrow things down so that when it is time, you feel like you know where you want to hone in on. So, next step, you found this house you love, and it's time to submit an offer. So, in this market right now that we're in, it is definitely more of a seller's market, which means there is a lot more buyers than there is inventory, which means the sellers have the upper hand here. And a big part of that reason is because of our mortgage rates right now. They're higher than they have been, and people do not want to lose their low mortgage percent. So they are staying in their home because they would lose that if they moved. But things are coming on and the spring is coming, and there's always an influx of homes coming to the market in the spring. But that all being said, the importance of a strong offer is everything. And many times people believe that it's just the highest offer price that wins, and it's actually not always the case. There are other parts of an offer that make it strong. One of those is your down payment. So typically, people put down 20%. However, you can put down less than 20% if you can show the funds that you actually have the 20%. And the point of this is you can put in more than 20%. And that, it's just another way to make your offer stand out. So all things being equal, if you have one offer that has 20% down and another offer that puts 40% down, again, everything else being equal, of course, you'd go with the 40% down because you'd get more money up front and it feels safer. So that's just one thing that goes into an offer. One moment. Another part of an offer that's important is to be flexible with your closing timeline. So again, the sellers have the upper hand right now. So if they want a fast close, I suggest that we do a fast close. And if they want to do a rent back for 30 days after you close, then I suggest that we let them do the rent back for 30 days. Again, just another way to sweeten your offer. All things being equal, if someone said that the seller said they wanted a quick close, and one buyer said they can make a quick close and the other buyer said they could not, they would pick the one with the quick close. So again, apples to apples, if you're flexible with their timeline, it helps. Now, inspection terms. In this day and age, in this market, we long gone are the days where if you see a crack in the window, you can say, I would like you to fix that. That no longer happens again because we're in a seller's market. So the language that we use on an offer is that we limit the inspections to major, major, major mechanical, electrical, structural, and safety issues. So that lets the seller know that the buyer is not going to be nitpicky. Now, in all honesty, everyone does that now. Everyone puts that in their offer. But a way to sweeten that part of the offer is to say that you would offer up to a certain amount of money should anything major occur. So, for example, let's say you had inspections on this home and it turned out that you needed a new HVAC and it was going to cost $15,000. I'm making this up. But you put in your offer that you would cover up to $10,000 of any issues. So that means you would pay $10,000 to get the HVAC fixed, and the seller would only have to pay $5,000. So that's a really big incentive for them and a great way to strengthen your offer because A, it saves them money. And then B, it shows them how committed you are to purchasing that home. Like you really want to help them. You're showing them how much you love the house. Um, and there's two other contingencies. One is called an appraisal contingency, and one is called a mortgage contingency. When we get to the appraisal portion of this, I will let Kathy come back on and explain that. I will talk about what a mortgage contingency is, even though I rarely recommend people do this because it's risky. If you waive your mortgage contingency, what you're basically saying is, I commit to buying this house, even if for some reason I don't get the mortgage. So that's a very risky thing to do. And I have to be honest, I've never used it once. It is sometimes something that people do. Perhaps they know that they can have someone cover them or they just have a unique situation. But I just wanted to be thorough in this presentation and educate you on what that means. So my role in all of this is obviously this is my wheelhouse. I will help you put together the strongest offer for your situation. And I have a very good track record with getting the homes, I'm happy to say. So, yeah, we will work together on that. So, next, step 6, attorney review. So, attorney review is once both parties, the sellers and the buyers, once they both sign the contract, it immediately goes into attorney review. And this is a few days. You could go anywhere from one day to, I mean, it could take a week, but it generally gets finished between 1 and 3 days. And the sellers go back and forth and propose changes that would help their seller, help the buyer till everyone is comfortable. And this is standard. The lawyers, this is standard stuff that they always do. They go back and forth. Sometimes the closing day is adjusted, or some other things are adjusted. Again, this can be done as quickly as one day. It could take longer, but in general, it takes 1 to 3 days. And the one thing that I like to impart on my clients is the most important thing during attorney review is that anyone, the seller or the buyer, can get out of the contract at this point. So if you put an offer in and they accept your offer and you're under contract and we go into attorney review, I always say you can celebrate and you can be happy, but you cannot pop the champagne because anything can happen. And I've had this happen where one time I had recently a client who put in a home. She got the house. She was super excited. The next morning, I got a call at 7 in the morning, finding out that somebody came in and put in $30,000 more dollars than her offer. They were kind to give us the right of first refusal, but that just wasn't in the cards for them, and they lost the home during attorney review. So we always get happy that we got it, but we don't celebrate until we're out of attorney review. And how I help in this stage is I basically help facilitate the communication between the listing agent and the attorneys and keep everything moving. I always talk to the attorneys, let's get this out, let's hurry up, let's get this out. And I'm on top of things so that we can get them out as soon as possible. Step 7, inspections and negotiations. So once you're out of attorney review, inspections are done within 7 days of getting out of attorney review. And it's the buyer's responsibility to hire an inspector. I work with tons of excellent ones that I can recommend if you don't have one. And what happens is you go to the home with the inspector. I will be there with you. And the inspector goes around the home and checks everything. And you go with him and listen to what's happening and if there are any issues. And he explains or she explains everything as you're going so you can get a good idea of what's happening in your home. Then, after within 24 hours, the inspector will put together a report of what they found that could be issues in the home. After that, you get the inspection report and you send it over to your attorney, and that's where you discuss with your attorney what you are going to ask for in terms of inspections being covered. So, for instance, let's say there are, 10 things that the inspector suggested you get fixed. You'll go through these 10 things with your attorney, and he will provide guidance as to which ones he thinks that you should ask to get paid for and which ones are not major. And I will be there with you to talk through those options and help you being a soundboard for that as well. The attorneys, they're trained on this. They know what types of things will, work and what won't. And then they can also help figure out, what the cost will be that will take to fix everything. So, for instance, let's say you do an inspection and they find that there is mold, right? So what will happen is we don't know the extent of the mold, so we will need to bring in a specialist. And what I do is I help schedule these, and I'm also there to let them in because I know you all live busy lives and you might not be able to get back to the house to do these appointments. And then after the mold person comes, he would give us an estimate. He would send that to you and the lawyers, and then the lawyers would go back and forth on how much the seller would cost versus the buyer. And again, my role in this is to talk you through the options and coordinate those evaluations and just keep the process moving. Step 8. So after the inspection, and we're done with the inspection, we're almost there. There's one more thing that happens, and that is the appraisal. And basically, an appraisal is a professional opinion of what a home is worth. And it's done by the bank or the lender who's offering you the money. So let's say you put an offer in on a home that's $500,000. The inspector comes out and he looks around or she looks around and independently decides what they think the house is worth. And we all hope that they think it's at least worth what you put in or more, right? Because then the bank is very happy. Great, this home is worth what you paid for.
Yes.
And, but what if for some reason you put an offer in for 500,000 and then the appraiser comes in and says your home is worth $450,000. Kathy, take it away.
So when this happens, one would think, oh gosh, I have to put in additional $50,000. But that's not the case. Very often we can look at the appraisal and decide, okay, the lender uses the lower of the appraised value or the sales price to determine value. So in this scenario, you can keep your loan amount at 400,000, assuming we were doing a $500,000 sales price with 20% down, or $500,000. I think the example last night was 500,000 with a $400,000 loan amount. So in this example, we can keep our loan amount the same, but the lender is going to use the 450 as the value. So in the lender's eyes, you are no longer putting down the 20%, but that doesn't mean that this is a deal breaker. You just have to pay a small amount depending on what the loan to value is in what we call private mortgage insurance. And in this example, it was $50 a month in private mortgage insurance, but you keep your loan amount the same. You do not have to bring any more money to closing, but you would have to pay a small amount per month until you get to the 20% equity position in the lender's eyes. So the deal gets saved, the $50 or $35 a month is added into your monthly payment, and you just move forward.
Right. So, Kathy, thank you for that. And going back to when we were talking about what makes a strong offer, if people who are paying cash, all cash, of course they'll waive the appraisal contingency, meaning there's no bank that has to be paid. So, they don't care what the home appraises at because they're paying in cash. However, when you're not paying in cash, you really want it to appraise. So, one thing that I do in this scenario is, you always hope that the lender sends out someone to appraise the home who's from the area. Because as we all know, there's certain innuendos to towns, certain locations that are better than others. And if for some reason the appraiser is not privy to that, what I do is I always come to each appraisal and I bring comparable sales. So I bring with me other sales of homes within the past 6 months that sold that are similar to the ones you bought. And I show that they sold for either as much or more. And then the other thing I do is I give them context. So again, back to my example, perhaps there's in a certain town, it was walking distance to a school. Perhaps the appraiser doesn't know that, but that really does add value to a home. So I will share those things with the appraiser so that he or she has the full picture to appraise the home. Okay. So we're almost there. This is step 9. It's the final walkthrough and the closing. So the final walkthrough and the closing generally happen on the same day. And it's basically to make sure that the house didn't burn down in a fire since you've last seen it, or have a huge flood in the basement since you've last seen it. So before you head on over to the closing, we both meet at the house. We walk through the house, we make sure everything's intact, make sure everything looks good. And at that point, you move on and you go to the lawyer's office and you sign the papers, and the house is yours. And I do go with you to the walkthrough. And if there is something that needs to be negotiated, obviously I will be in touch with their listing agent if necessary. And that's really the home buying steps. However, after you move into a home, I don't just go away. I am more than a transactional realtor. I really enjoy getting to know my clients and serving them. And I look at myself as a local resource for you for life. And I'm always a text away. And any question you may have about the town, if you need local recommendations, painters, anything, I will absolutely provide them for you. And I'm also very big in supporting community, and I love to do community events. And you will clearly be invited to all of these events, free of cost, of course, because you're my clients. And it's a great way. I've had lots of new clients who have been very grateful to come to these events and meet other people who had recently moved to the town to help them connect and make friends. So, next steps is let's create a personalized buying strategy for you. And again, even if you're 12 months away, it doesn't hurt to start the process, to just talk it out, see what you're looking for, get things in order, and start looking at different towns over time. And I will follow up with all of you after this webinar. And Kathy, I want to thank you so much for imparting your knowledge about pre-approvals.
Thank
And
you. And I
and
also just
then
wanted to say that
yes.
I also stay in touch. So some of the clients we worked with in the past, Laura, I'm speaking with now about refinancing.
Oh, great. Awesome. It's exactly. We're both that's just who we are and how we work with
Yes,
our clients.
right. Thank you.